Welcome to the January 25th meetup of the NMRA Coast Division. We have a few exciting items on the agenda today. First up, we'll talk a little bit about some upcoming events and new events. Then we'll talk a bit about some coast modeling. But before that, we're going to have a discussion from Jesse Walden of a survey he did on our groups.io page. So very briefly, let me talk about a couple of events that are going on. For those of you who have not registered, next weekend is the Bay Area SIG weekend being held in Sacramento. I know that's not the Bay Area, but it works out fairly close. That'll be a fun event. If you haven't been to a SIG weekend, it's a combination of some education on operations and the opportunity to go to a bunch of operating sessions. So go ahead and come and enjoy that. If you haven't planned on it, I got a good rate I think I'm at the Motel 6, so reasonable rate up there. Our winter meet is scheduled for February 15th. That'll be at the Golden State Model Railroad Museum. I think we're looking at 4 layouts open. At this point, Jack Burgess will be open in the afternoon. So for those who've never been to Jack's layout, it'll be a chance to see it before, Jack's trying to figure out what to do with it. So that'll be a good opportunity. Jesse's going to host a square foot challenge. I am trying to get a model built for that, so we will see how that goes. The PCR convention is March 27th to 30th in San Luis Obispo. If you haven't signed up, sign up. If you can't go and would like to attend, it's going to be virtual. And I think PCR 2025 is a code that will get you a $10 discount on the virtual convention. So the next thing is our coast auction. We have scheduled our next auction for June 1st. That will be at the Alameda Senior Center. It is a bit more expensive. Their rates went up. So one of the things we are looking for is a new location. So if anyone knows of a new location, kind of let us know. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Jesse. Jesse took on doing we call it a survey of what would you like to do, and he put together a little report. And so I've just put the whole thing here. So Jesse, I'm going to go ahead and throw this over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Phil. I just wanted to say this is just a report. This is not a time for, beating these things together or that sort of stuff. I felt that ask the question, what do you want to do? And what types of things would you be interested in? And so once we got that, it goes off to the management, if you will, and then they decide which events would be worth doing or facilitating, that sort of stuff. So in terms of responses, believe it or not, the one that got somewhat of the most was auctions. People love auctions, even if they don't show up. And it was mentioned that we shouldn't just have 2 big auctions a year, but one alternative was when we have a meet, we should have a small auction. And I have no comments about feasibility or anything like that. In fact, all of these things, it was a brainstorming. What would you like to do? And just tell me. So the first one was auctions. The second one, which I thought was really interesting, I called Breakfast of Champions. And really it was some of the regions, some of the groups get together on a regular basis for no other reason than to eat. They have lunch or they have breakfast. The group might be 5 or 6. It might be more or less. But that was suggested that maybe we do that and facilitate it in the sense that we have 3 or 4 different sections of our area, our region, if you will, and we could have one every month in a different area or something. Another one that got a couple of interesting concessions was the operating thing that is the ops meeting that's happening in Sacramento, there's a lot of people that would love to do ops, go to a layout, whether it be a home layout or a club layout or something like that. But the people don't want to spend a whole weekend dragging themselves all over the place. They don't want to even spend 6 or 8 hours doing this. So the idea was to have something called mini ops sessions, where it would be 2 or 3 operators, possibly. It would be at a layout, whether it be a home or a big club or something like that. And it would be on a Friday night or a Saturday or whatever would work. The next one that was interesting was a lot of people liked going away. In other words, if you remember, we all went off to Sacramento when they opened up the NMRA exhibit at the train museum. People thought that was pretty cool, and they really enjoyed that going away, whether it be a day and some people suggested a weekend and really make a long trip out of it. So that's something somebody should explore and figure out. Another thing, actually, 5 and 6 are related. There was a question for everybody. Most people liked or didn't comment on the clinics. We run a clinic, 1-hour clinic, and several people felt this was really a bit superficial to learn a skill. Now, sometimes that's all you need is just an hour to learn a specific skill. But other people had suggested, wouldn't it be nice to have ongoing training of some sort? And that tied to the next one, and that was achievement certificates or master model railroad or whatever, where you don't just spend an hour and learn the civil engineering part of this, especially if you don't know much of anything, but you're really interested. So you go and you do something, you come back the next unknown period of time, you critique it, the teacher talks to you about it, etc. So that's something that was liked. And the last one that I thought was worth putting on the report was when my kid was little, she used to watch Mr. Rogers on television. And the question was, who are the people in your neighborhood? A lot of modelers are shocked to find out that, did you know that so-and-so up the block has this great O-scale layout above his garage, or so-and-so runs Z trains and whatever. They wanted a facility to be able to figure out, or a sort of some sort, who lives within a mile of them or within 3 or 4 miles of them. So there was that, so that they could reach out on a one-on-one basis and, hey, I'd love to come over and see your layout. Or somebody would say, my layout is open for anybody who I want to meet anybody in the neighborhood, have them contact me. So again, it's just a matter of possibly how you sort the database. There were other things, but this was, I think, the most important ones. And thank you very much. And I would curtsy, but I'm sitting down. And my background shows how far along my module is coming. So I should tell Larry, it looks like we've got maybe 4 or 5 feet of table, if you will, that we'll need. We're not getting people haven't tremendously jumped up and said, oh yeah, everybody's going to come. So I'm done.
Jesse, this is Dave Connery. This is really valuable information. Thank you very much for conducting that survey. From
Oh,
my perspective, and we've tried several of those things over the years, you can't expect our existing leadership to just suddenly take on another new project. Most of them are probably pretty much stressed to the limit of what they're able to provide. That what we need to do is find a person, one person to manage each little possibility. Just say, okay, you're doing number 5 or you're doing number 2 or something, and they take ownership for that and just press it on.
well, one of the
Well,
things that I learned uh, in researching miscellaneous things is as the Santa Fe Railroad, a lot of divisions and regions have assistant superintendents that are in charge of things. And I looked at our list here and I realized there's one guy, and that's Phil, who's the superintendent. And I agree with you. Somehow or other, you
yeah,
want to have something to somebody to say, yeah, I'm going to try to organize the XYZ, and I'll call for volunteers and I'll set up a little committee, et cetera, et cetera. Again,
Very hot.
I'm just throwing out, it's just ideas, but I think that was one that I liked.
yeah. This is Phil. So, I think a couple of comments. Absolutely, doing more stuff takes some volunteers. I think Dave's absolutely right. Now, one of the things I like about what Jesse got back and love the initiative to go do this and go out and ask is, doing a local meetup is something anybody can host, right? So all you have to do is say, hey, you know, I'd like to just have a meetup on Saturday at the local Denny's or wherever. The reality is, we were going to go do a heat map, and I signed up for some mapping software, but I've got to go do it. It's basically, if you look at where people live in the South Bay, people live in the East Bay, a few people on the peninsula, but that's predominantly where people live in the coast. And then there's a few people down in the far South Bay and in the Half Moon Bay area. But if someone said, "Hey, want to do something in the South Bay or East Bay," absolutely, we'll publicize it. We can pick a date out in the future. I mean, it's really not hard to do. All you got to do is say, "I'll be there and host it on this date at a restaurant." Um,
One of the things, Phil, when I did this survey, I I run a couple of groups for different organizations, and basically I do email lists. And when you suggested this, or moaned and groaned about nobody wants to show up to things, and I said, okay, let's ask. It was a cinch because what I did was I went online, I found the email list from something that I respond to all or sent
yeah,
it out, groups IO,
yeah,
and that was it. But to do what you're saying, I agree with you 100%. You just
right.
have to tell everybody, hey, if you want to organize this, go to groups IO and send out
Well,
an email.
well,
That's all.
and
But
here's the
nobody
thing,
knows that unless they're into this
right?
kind of, you
Well,
know,
so here's the thing is, if you kind of look over your list, and by the way, the list, this was in the Coast Extra that went out yesterday. So
yeah,
this
thank
list
you.
was actually in there. So, if there's one of these that someone says, "Hey, I'd like to get involved in doing that," if you have a layout and you haven't been open, you say, "Hey, I'd like just to have a Saturday open." One of the things that the baggers folks I think do a great job of is just people saying, "I want to be open on a Saturday," and we'll advertise you're going to be open on a Saturday,
Yeah,
or a Sunday or whenever. And so, I think it is a bit the grassroots stuff is what I came away with this saying was there's a lot of little things that someone can do that doesn't require you to come in and organize a huge event. Now, having said that, more than willing to come in and help. As far as the concept of an assistant superintendent, if anyone would raise their hand to do a role, it would be great. It takes begging to go get roles done. Anybody not moving to Saginaw, that is. So I absolutely think so. My hope is that somebody looking at this, send me an email and say, hey, I'd like to try doing, I'd like to have my layout open. I'd like to do this. Now, one of these we have tried.
Now, Phil, what I want you to do, please, is I want you to send an email out to the group, saying, if anybody's interested in taking any of these, please contact you.
Yep. No,
don't say anybody could contact. You have to push people and say,
yep,
respond to me. That's
so far,
so
the only I've ever found is for people actually to ask them directly between us. So
yeah, but the whole purpose of this was people don't do it.
But the other thing is that if you want to try to do something and you're concerned about, well, I don't know what to do, don't worry about that. I mean, that call me up and we'll talk about what needs to be done. What are the steps you have to do? David can tell you we went through a lot of things as we put the clinics together, and it requires sometimes some thought process, and not a big deal. So, the other thing that we have done is we have tried to put together skills-based activities. So like the last time at the auction, it's the clinic we tried to do in the morning, or we didn't do it. It was more of a workshop, on weathering. We had one that was a workshop on doing a DCC and decoder installations. I guess one of the questions that, and you can feedback to me, or feel free to feedback to Jesse, what skills or things would people like to see? Because we do have time. For example, we could do a 2-hour workshop before the auction, June 1st, on a specific topic. And one of the things we asked at the one that we did in the last auction was for people who had, were skilled in the subject to come in and be willing to set up and talk about how to do it. I mean, so laying track would be, another topic that we could do and go through. I know, David did a couple of soldering clinics and they were very popular. So, I guess the question there is there a topic that people think would make sense to focus on for June?
Well, there's a couple of things that are pretty easy to do. One of the things we did a number of years ago was have a breakfast on John Allen's birthday. John Allen really liked strawberry syrup on his pancakes. So we just set up a 8:00 meeting at an IHOP, and we all got together, and we had anywhere from 5 to 12 people there, I think. And we did it for a couple of years, and then something came in the way and we stopped doing it. But it could easily be reinstituted, and that would be just a social activity. On the other hand, at one point we did in-home clinics where somebody could volunteer. You need somebody to coordinate it, but somebody could volunteer to host anywhere from 3 to 6 people in their home and do a clinic. And it could be something like scenery, where you're actually working on the home layout, and everybody get a chance to try their hand at certain skills.
That was exactly what Pat Latorres said to me. That one.
If I could say something about the weathering clinic that happened at the last meeting, although I've been weathering models for 45 years, I thought that clinic was really nice.
Where was that clinic, David?
It was at the Alameda Senior Center.
Ah, okay, that was the one that I and Frank held.
Markovich.
Right.
Yeah,
what we just had on weathering. Yeah, I think that's, if you just kind of have a show up and demonstrate, bring some stuff and demonstrate, it's the question is, what is the right topic? Is the right topic, installing track, and say, well, we're going to go through three or four things about installing and laying out track, and actually get a piece of plywood and actually go through the steps that you do. I don't, that maybe that's one good example. David, go ahead. Yeah.
The thing is that it partly depends on, well, now if we do a social thing at a restaurant, the facility is provided. If the thing's done at a person's home and or layout, then it's how many people they can fit into the space working to do stuff. When I raise my hand, Phil, I still hope before I move away to just say, some people come on over here and make fun of my layout such as it is, and trying to figure out how to apply a car card system to it that actually works and try it out. Have an afternoon of doing that sort of thing. And that's something that I can host. And it comes back to the limitations of the presenter. For me, because of my responsibilities caring for my wife's elderly father, getting away from home is difficult. And so having folks come to me to host a little get together works out. And I think that's true of any folks who want to be able to host something, is figuring out how to make it work at their home, at their layout, in their garage, whatever it might be.
So again, just kind of to think this through. If anyone wants to do a personal event, and I know we've talked about what I call is three kinds of personal is not the right word, may individual/personal, right? One is host an activity at an outside location like a restaurant, a breakfast, a lunch, whatever the subject is, date or time, totally up to whoever wants to set it up. That's one option. Second option is to have a open layout tour. Third option is to have an operating session. And fourth option is to have some sort of an in-home clinic or work session, or however you want to say it, on a focused subject. The reality is, if anyone wants to do any one of those, just give me a buzz and we'll figure out the date you want to do it, and we'll publicize it. And if you have a limited number of people, I mean, we can go ahead and set up very easily a form where people, if they want to come to your event, they enter their name and their email address and their phone number, and you get that list of who's applied. And if you're limiting it to 3 people, you can come back and say, hey, I had 6 people apply and I took the first 3, so these are the 3 that are going to come over. I mean, more than willing to kind of start setting up those. We can start setting up what we call micro events, or whatever we want to call it. All it takes is someone saying, hey, I'm willing to do this on this day.
Mini meet.
Yeah, exactly. So like I said, anything like that, just let me know, and we'll try setting one up. Just
So in a way, I realize we're doing this already. We don't have to have a meet where the 100 members or whatever, or hundreds of people show up. Yeah, I mean, think about it. Monthly operating sessions are regular meets that people know about and sometimes get invited to. Many of you probably are familiar with the so-called DCC lunch that's been going on for years, right? That people meet for lunch on Fridays. There's a group down here in the South Bay that gets together every couple of weeks for lunch. Why not just post those? We don't have to necessarily invite everybody, but just post and say they're going on, so people know. I don't know how many, I learned about the DCC lunch by word of mouth, but if those were posted, because that's the whole idea, right? Just have smaller groups meeting on a semi-regular basis.
And so again, if the group would like their group to be published, the problem with a lot of those things is that we tend to be pretty cliquey guys. I mean, one of the things is, and you don't really realize this, when you're in the clique, you don't realize how cliquey things are. Right. So when someone's new, how do they find out about those things? How do they go to them? And,
Exactly.
I'll be really frank. When I first joined, I went to the DCC lunch, and it was not a welcoming experience at all. And that's so, one of the things is, if we're going to list groups and that, I think people got to understand, if you're going to be listed as being, we have a lunch, then when somebody shows up you've never seen before, you can't just kind of ignore them and act like, well, why are you here?
Right.
You have to be engaged. Otherwise, somebody does one experience, that's the end of using that. And that's so. I think that's one of the other sides of this. It's not just listing things that are the kind of clicks that people are doing. But I love the idea of listening to those things. If people, if a group that does a lunch, and you go to a lunch, ask everybody and say, do we mind putting this on the PCR calendar, that this isn't a regular event that happens, that's a model railroad event, and that we welcome new people to attend. I mean, I think that would be great.
Mhm.
I think it solves, one of our problems, and we actually need to think about this for the February meet is, when we do get new people in, how do we make them feel, meet people, get integrated.
Yeah.
We haven't gone through the introduce yourself, say how many meets you've been to and what scale you model and where you live. We do have a database. We can target it based on zip codes and other stuff. So, if someone says, hey, I'd like to target folks that are around me to let them know I'm here, that would be great. Somehow we've got to kind of let I think members are probably okay with being told, hey, you can come over here to my place. We got to figure out how we do the other side of telling people where other people are if they don't know. We got to kind of figure out the logistics of that.
Emailing, saying contact X versus
Right.
email or some other semi-anonymizing way. So then they can check in with the person hosting the event to say, the event is at, okay, you're interested, come to here.
Right. Well, and I think, if you look at Joyce's meet she generally has in the spring, I think she has it generally about in April, May kind of time frame where she has a day where she hosts an event at her house. I mean, that we publicized that last year, and I think she got a lot more folks because of it. And that is to me exactly the kind of event that more than willing to publicize. And, like I said, we have I don't know how many people, we get about a little over half to 60% of the Coast Extras get opened. Can't really tell how much folks read. A lot of it's kind of repetitive because it's about the same events, but trying to put in something new and different every couple of weeks. But does that work for people? Just out of curiosity. Generally, people get because we keep fighting trying to get a newsletter out, but the problem is that the newsletter becomes just big articles. Then if we do all the focus stuff in the Coast Extra, which I think is better because if it comes every couple of weeks and it's going to come every couple of weeks based on when these meetings are, you can kind of know, hey, I can check in a couple of weeks and see what's going on for the next 3 or 4 months. Cool. Well, I think we beat that one to death. Do a square foot challenge if you haven't done one. It's going to be fun. I'm madly working on it.
I hope so. For anybody who vaguely remembers, my background is another piece of my square foot challenge. If you remember last episode, I had my foam down and I put my little push pins down, and now I've got part of my station area finished, and that's sort of what it looks like. My biggest obstacle, believe it or not, was I have a ground cover that I'm going to use, and it's sand from New Mexico, right from the mesas. And what I normally do is I put down a layer of paint. Then I may or may not put white glue down, and then I'll sprinkle the sand on. And I didn't have the paint that matched or close to the sand. And thank God for the charming Mrs. Walden. She came up and said, oh, well, you've got all these bottles here. How about this one and that one? And so anyway, we're moving right along. And it has become a family affair.
We hope to meet someday the charming Mrs. Walden to see what kind of woman can put up with you, sir.
Well, as soon as they release her. No, she's a gem, and We've been married, I think it's 56 or 57 years now. We got married when we were 12, so that helps. But 12 years before we were born, it's an arranged thing. But no, she's a gem and she's charming.
So in trying to be a twofer, I needed a station on the Moduline, the large Moduline building. And after looking around and thinking about it, I decided that the right station was to use Agnew's. So I went and I did a full set of measurements on the Agnew station, I guess Tuesday. And so here let me put a picture up here.
Was this a photographic measuring thing, or did you actually get a tape measure out?
Oh no, you know what? You don't need tape measures anymore. Has anybody played with this measuring feature on your phone?
I know
So
of them.
there is this really cool feature. Now I've got an iPhone. I don't know if it's the same on a Samsung or on an Android, but in the iPhone there's a tool called Measure, and it's got a level and it's got a measure. And if you click the measure, what you get is a screen, and you get a dot, and you pick a place, and you click the dot, and you walk away from that place to another place and click the dot again, and it gives you the distance between them. And so what I did, I have it here somewhere. I have to find it, but I made up a sheet with all the dimensions on it. Here, hang on. I'll put the PowerPoint. You guys know I use PowerPoint to do all this kind of miscellaneous crap.
I think this topic, I mean, I'm not trying to stop you, but I think this would be a great topic to present at a PCR meeting, like the weathering clinic.
I was always amazed that I could do the level thing or the compass. I've never heard of the other one. I agree with you that this would be nice for a very short mini clinic type of thing. These are the toys I can do on my iPhone.
So basically what I did was I went in and I do this in PowerPoint because I like I know PowerPoint. So, I started off by the shape of the building. I got this from Google Earth. So this was all done before I ever went and took pictures. So what I started doing was figuring out what are the measurements I need. And I drew this and I put places. So when I went there, I had all the measurements laid out, the siding, the overhangs on the roof on either end, the basic footprint of the building. And then what I did was based on pictures on the internet that I found, I did, side profiles where all the windows and doors were, and again, put all the dimensions in. So by printing these two sheets out and taking them with me, I had a place. But the cool thing about this tool on your phone is you can walk up to the building and you click to start here, and you walk from here to here, and you click here and it gives you that dimension. Then you keep walking, you click here and you get this dimension. You keep walking, you click here and you get this dimension. So it literally takes about 40 seconds to get 3 dimensions off the building, no tape measures involved.
What is the underlying technology? Just the fact that the phone knows where it's at?
It can use the combination of the picture and the GPS to figure out the position of a point in space. And it positions that point in space literally that accurately, so that when you walk and you move that pointer 10 feet to another point in space, it knows in 3-dimensional space on the earth where you moved the pointer.
Yeah, pretty neat.
I mean, it's if you have never played with it, just click on the measure tool, and what you do is you pick the thing, you'll see a point in the middle. There's a little button, click on that, and then move it and click again, and you'll get the distance in between. It'll show you exactly what the distance is. Makes life really easy. So, basically what I did then was I've taken that and I've developed it turns out my structure can't be that size because I'm limited to a 12-inch. It's a little bit larger than this blue box. So what I've done is I've shrunk the building proportionally. And then of course the problem is I ended up going and taking some pictures. And so I did go take a bunch of pictures as when I went and measured it. And what I figured out was that all of the windows and doors, and this goes back to pictures from 1890s and 1900, have these pretty amazing architectural details on the top. It looks like somebody was used to building mantles and they put mantles on top of all the doors. So what I've been doing now is, so this is a door in FreeCAD. That's a door. Let's see, this is This is the brackets that go on the end walls. If you look here, there's these brackets that are on the walls. So I've done is basically recreated that in FreeCAD. Kind of hard to see here in this image just because it's buried in all the planes to create the stuff, and then the window frames. So Fran is actually printing this stuff on his resin printer for me now. Having him do it, I appreciate it because I don't have a resin printer. So, but hopefully I'll get that done. And it actually turns out it's a 12-inch base. It's like a 12 by 8-inch base. So I'll have room to put a track on a piece of foam and make it look like a 12 by 12 thing to get by.
You know, I have those lentils over all over my house, over the
Yep.
doors, and the house was built in 1910, and we found out that was sort of throwaway apprentice work.
Huh.
These poor guys were getting like $1 a day, and they would build these things up, and then they just came and they sort of put them in and they cut them to bing. And I've got them over weird places like bathroom doors. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, yeah. It's kind of like crown molding. We
exactly.
we did an addition on our house, and the guy came in and did the sheetrock, and it was like there were like wiggly lines up at the top, and it was like I said, this is awful. This looks like, well, aren't you going to put crown molding up? I said, no, we're not putting crown molding up. It didn't fit the house. It was like, oh, you mean I actually have to make straight lines? It was quite it was quite the moment of excitement for the contractor. Yeah, it's
So
but
Phil,
yeah,
I wanted to ask you a question. Did you need another piece of software between FreeCAD and the resin printer to create the appropriate files?
yeah, you have to have a slicer. So basically, what happens is FreeCAD, you output what's called a .stl file,
Yep.
which is basically a standard file that describes the item in 3 dimensions. Then you give that to a slicer. So like here, hang on. So I
when
don't
you
do
buy a resin printer, you usually get a slicer with it, right?
right. You get a slicer to use. Exactly. You pick your
Not
slicer.
not always.
Okay.
Some guys ship a slicer, but there's Cura is a common one. There's a number
Right.
out there, open source ones that you can use as well.
This sounds
So
to me like another great topic for a convention.
well,
You know,
actually,
Oh yeah.
yeah. Well, and Fran did one on it. So this is Cura. Now this is
Yeah.
this is not a resin printer. This is actually a
The slicer.
this is the slicer. This thing here is actually a button board. Let me show you something different here. Let me pull down. This is what another project I've been working on. So this is this is a holder for a switch 8, which is a switch 8 is a DCC board for 8 turnouts. And because we have so much current demand on our turnouts, you can't use it directly. So basically, this board combines with a couple other little boards that hold little single board relays. They look like this, if you guys can see that. These are $1 on Amazon. And so basically, this was defined in FreeCAD, as a file somewhere in here.
It's the window file.
Yeah, so this file here is actually the FreeCAD, all the things that make up that item. And then, you basically load it down into here, and then when it's loaded down into here, you go ahead and slice it. And so what this does is this goes through a process, and it takes a second to do it. And what it's figured out was what the instructions should be. And then you can actually, this guy lets you look at it. So this is actually the object, and you can look at what all the layers look like. You can see how it builds up. And what's nice is if you take this view, you can go in and you can actually see at each layer. And I've got a separate tool which lets you pick one of these layers and decide whether you want the head to run this way. But if you pick a layer here, you can actually go in here and you can watch what it does on that layer. So see, that's
That's a,
actually what it's telling the print
but
head to do on the.
that's a filament printer. That's showing
This
you
is a
how a
filament
filament.
printer, right?
Yeah.
But I'm just saying the resin printer works very similarly in terms of defining something that goes to, you know, the resin printer and basically has a shot. Each layer is a shot on the light system, and it does the same thing. It says, okay, on this layer, which of the elements on the light should I turn on to basically burn a pixel in the plastic? It's the same kind of concept. Each layer gets treated about what it does, except the difference is the resin does it as a single shot. But yeah. Yeah, Fran did a Tinkercad clinic, which I would recommend for most people. Tinkercad. I started using FreeCAD. I just haven't changed. I think Tinkercad's a lot easier to use.
I've been using Tinkercad. It takes a while. It's got a learning curve, but
Yep.
you just have to keep making things with it to get the hang of it.
But anyway, yeah. So this basically then I got to turn off my background here. The problem with having a background on is you can't see
Show things.
anything. Yeah, exactly. So this is, you know, one of the things the filament printer is really good for is doing all this kind of tools and other stuff. So basically,
I don't
you
think
know,
Tinkercad is free anymore.
it
It
is.
is still.
It is. Yeah. So basically, you know, this is what this looks like, and then let me pull something up here.
Ken, what was your thought about Tinkercad not being free anymore?
Um, the last time I tried to use it, I got a thing from Adobe that said I needed to have a subscription.
Yeah, you have to have a subscription, but it's a free subscription. But it's online now. It's they used to have
An
an
app.
offline an app,
Yeah.
but it's all purely online now. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you know, one of the things you have to do is, so this is big enough that you have to actually have it. It's three pieces. So basically, the way this works is this piece here. If you notice, it's cut in there. That actually glues on top of the piece I showed you that's actually done printing, and this holds the relays, these individual relays here. So, and that's actually on the printer right now. So the idea is you take the output of the switch 8, you know, which is this guy, and this controls 8 turnouts, and then there's a relay for each one of the turnouts that sits here and connects over here with a couple of diodes, so that you can run, you know, 2 or 3 sets of LEDs and 2 turnouts on each output. So because the switch 8 only has about a 40 milliamp output current, and that's not enough to run. What happened when we started connecting the switches to the layout in Pleasanton, the first time we did it, instead of getting 14-volt output, we got 3-volt output because there was so much load between the turnout motors and all the LEDs that were on each line to show people at different places what was going on. We don't worry about current when you're controlling things with a double pole, double throw switch. Fun toys.
So, who else has something to share today?
I don't know. I'm just sort of mulling things around. We're talking about things to present and stuff like that. And I'm sort of going back to my earliest attempt at a profession as a historian. And I'm very, very interested in what we call business history, which in our case is specifically railroad history. Not viewed as a simple outline of when the track was laid, but more or less along the economic business rationales and how these things grew over time. Now, personally, I've got a very great fondness for my local Southern Pacific subdivision, which is the Martinez subdivision of the Western Division. And so everything I do is really geared towards the historical accuracy of trying to represent and understand what was going on in that subdivision in 1950 to 55. And so it's a very specific type of thing. And I'm just wondering how interested people are in these actual, very much looking at the prototypes and looking at them not only from when the track was laid or what equipment ran, but how the whole economic environment of it existed. And I got to do a shout out to Dave and the San Ramon Valley people. Who have done an excellent job in N scale with a modular layout that really does represent an economic life of what was occurring in the early 20th century.
I
And
think
I
a
think
lot.
that
Go ahead.
go, Phil.
No, go, David.
Okay. Ken, the thing is, as I work on something I'll share with you guys a little later here, a plan for a layout representing a certain railroad at a certain time, that economic information is a foundation to underlie the operations that you might put together.
Absolutely.
And I think Larry Osorio is speaking also, so I'll shut up. And Phil's there too.
Well, Larry's going to tell me that he agrees to do the clinic I asked him to do.
I guess you didn't get my email. I'm going in surgery on Friday the 31st. I don't know if I'll be up to getting out of bed on that day. I wish I could.
Yeah, Larry did a clinic at the convention about kind of the the underlying customer relations part of railroads and that, which I thought was really interesting. I mean, I think it depends a lot on who the person is. And one of the beauties of model railroading is is a fairly big tent, in terms of people, and some people get very interested in kind of the underlying prototypical details, et cetera, and some don't. I personally think it's really interesting. I mean, I love reading about the NCO and being the railroad that actually had a murder in the boardroom during a board meeting. I thought that was quite impressive. You got to get pretty dysfunctional as a business to get to the point where you're shooting each other. So, you very quickly realized that one of the business economics of most railroads was that they were formed, they raised a bunch of money, they immediately went bankrupt and screwed all the investors.
A lot of the 19th century railroading was things were built on the sort of premise that if you build it, they will come.
Internet. It was the internet
Activity. And that evolved into the 20th century when we start actually getting to, we've got to service these customers.
Yep.
Up till today, where we have precision scheduled railroading, where we don't give a hoot about customers anymore. And, that's the basis of my clinic. I'm the service planner at Southern Pacific for 15 years. So I was really involved with marketing and operating and sales and the whole thing. And our group was basically, you get the customers together, you find out what they need, then you get the marketing team to put together a plan for them. And then you go to operations and present that to operations and allow them to build the service for the customer. And so my clinic is basically, are you serving, you're doing operations, you're running trains like a railroad, but are you really? Are you really serving your customer? Are you keeping your customer happy just because you're keeping your trains on schedule and things like that? And that's the purpose of my clinic, is to try to get people to think a little beyond just operations of the physical manifestation of running your trains, but actually thinking about, are you satisfying the customer? And I actually, at the end of the clinic, I challenged people. I said, I don't know much about operations and model railroading. You guys are the experts. My challenge is, how do you fit this into an operational scheme? And maybe someday somebody will come up with it.
The theory used to be that if your customers were happy, your shareholders were happy. I'm not sure that relationship still goes.
Nope, it doesn't today.
Back in a few minutes.
If I can have a couple of minutes of your time, I'd like to share what I'm presently involved in, if you'd like to see that.
Go for it. Absolutely.
Okay, so let's see if I can share a screen. So, yeah, I'm a NMRA member, but I'm also a member of European Train Enthusiasts on and off for quite some time. This is a club that was started in Sacramento, but now has chapters all over the United States. And this is the kind of stuff I tend to do. I'm 75. I've been collecting for 50 years. Doesn't mean I've gotten any smarter, but now I'm kind of interested in looking at models and seeing whether they're prototypically accurate rather than simply going out and buying them. So at least a recent piece of analysis I did was on a Markland model. Most of you probably know Markland is nominally for AC, but this is kind of a tongue-in-cheek thing where I say, well, here's this Markland model of 46406, and it's a model that even a Gleichstromer can love, and a Gleichstromer is a DC person. We used to, within the club, we used to have like two sides. There were the Markland people, which we derisively called Marklandista, and then there were the DC people who were the other extreme. So I went through this set, which is kind of interesting. This is background. You don't care about that. This is what the set looks like. It sells for $260 to $300 retail. And, so Markland on their website has a description of it. And it's kind of interesting because it's actually got two each of two different kinds of cars, railroad cars. And these railroad cars were actually built by the East German Railroad. And that was in itself kind of interesting because in their crazy planned economy over there, East Germany didn't have in its job jar building these railroad cars. So they had to go to a manufacturer in Romania. So that was kind of interesting. So I just go jump the more interesting thing. So you got a total of 4 state cars in it, and you got 8 nice tractors, tractors like for tractor trailers. And so then what I do, this is kind of a template that I have, I try to meet, where first of all, I want to talk about the prototype. So this is one of the state cars, which is a KS 3300. What's different about it? When was it made? How many were produced? Sometimes I talk about what happened after the change when East Germany didn't exist anymore. Turns out these cars were pretty popular and they were taken over by the new West German Railroad. I'm just trying to give you an idea of what I talk about. So then there's a page or two about the other state car, which I screwed up there, which is another thing.
David, is
Yeah,
a way I can contact you offline?
sure.
I spent 19 months with the 3rd Armored Division in Germany,
Oh, okay.
and 1960s, but still.
So I think you can, I think in the, you can see my email, can't you, in some NMRA database or?
Dave?
Why don't you just throw it in the chat?
Just
That's
post it
maybe
in the chat. Yeah.
I'll
throw
do
your
that. I'll
email
do
in the
that as soon as
chat.
I get
Yeah.
done. So
Yeah,
I talk about
that's
the other
great.
car. This is kind of a joke. You always have to have some humor when you're making these presentations. And one of the problems with these cars that I noted is that these are state cars actually, and East Germany chose the kind of state cars where the stake is permanently installed on the side and it's simply rotated into position, rotated into the vertical position. And oddly enough, when you look at the stakes, one of them has the car serial number on it, but when the stake is folded down, the serial number's upside down. But what the hell? Markland's not that stupid. How did they ever manage to do this? So I thought about this for a couple of days. We're going to go to the next slide here. We're going to try to go to the next slide. So it turns out this freight car is sold in another set. And I found this out not because I have a giant collection of Markland catalogs, but the Markland website works like Amazon. And when you buy a product, there at the bottom, it says, well, if you bought one of these darn things, you might be interested in buying something else. So I found out about this other model, 45042. I go look at pictures of 45042, and lo and behold, the numbers when the stake is folded down is not upside down. So this bothered me and I slept on it and finally came to the conclusion that this was an assembly problem, that Markland had put these stakes in the wrong place. Because when you look at the side of a car, and this yellow oval here is to represent something near the middle, cars to the right, the stakes rotate clockwise, and stakes to the left of the middle of the car rotate counterclockwise. So all you got to do is move the stakes around. And luckily, that's easy to do without things. I won't go to all the details. And then this got kind of interesting is looking at the trucks that were the freight car loads on here. And the trucks are Skodas. And unfortunately, I don't recheck. And besides, there's not a lot of information about these Skoda trucks. But they're nice models. Markland didn't make them. They were made by another company called Retina. And then I'm a collector at heart. And I found out that Markland did some really nasty stuff to confound the collectors. First of all, this model never appeared in the annual catalog. It never appeared in the catalog that showed all the new models for 2024. It appeared only in one catalog that showed the summer novelty models. Okay, so here's a picture of it. And I've identified all the trucks. There's car one, there's an A and a B, the left and the right. Then car two, and there's a left and a right. And so then you go look at the website art. And the website art, you can see is a little squirrely here because they interchange the order of 3 and 4. So obviously the art department isn't talking to somebody else. But then you look at the box art on the model, they scrambled it again. So this is kind of funny. You know, it's not order 1, 2, 3, 4. It's order 4, 3, 2, 1. But where it really got devious is when you look at what's in the box. And I'll tell you, you had to work to scramble things up as badly as it is in the box. And, you know, how this happened, it's one of the mysteries of a major toy manufacturer. And I talk about the wheels because the wheels that Markland puts on their models do not meet NMRA standards. They're non-isolated, non-insulated, and they're also NEM flanges, not NMRA flanges. But luckily, there's some enterprising little shop, very difficult to deal with. There's some enterprising little shop in Berlin that makes isolated wheels with wheel sets with RP25 flanges. So then I do an overall assessment. I mean, was everything the way it's supposed to be? What did I like? What did I not like? These things. And then I always keep track of my references. People want to know, you know, where'd you get that piece of information? And so normally I like to put references here, not that anybody looks at them, but let them know what I didn't know. I actually read some kind of reference. Okay, so in any event, that's kind of what keeps me interested now besides collecting and operating my trains. I'll stop the share here. And so that's what floats my boat. I'm done.
Nice research.
Pretty good. Yeah, pretty good.
Good. Well done.
Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah. Okay. I have to go and push bread around. That's my other big hobby, by the way. I make bread. And so we get up
Well,
at 6 o'clock.
that's where the dough is. So.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. Everybody have a good week, and we'll be talking. Take care.
Take care, Jesse. I have something to share. I'll put myself in line for doing some sharing.
Go for it.
All right, let's see if I can get this right. I don't know how many of you gentlemen are familiar with John Armstrong's Given and Druthers, which is
Sure.
the things that you say have to be and the things you say you'd like to have. So I think you should see a drawing of a architectural drawing of a basement, the floor plan.
Mm-hmm.
And what I have done here is figured out how to waste 1,500 square feet. And what you see here is fitting in some givens and druthers that sometimes aren't mentioned and sometimes are, but I wanted to make sure that the railroad was buildable, and that it is a railroad that is easy for people to get around in. And so I have sacrificed a huge amount of square footage to aisle space. I don't know how many of you have had chances to get in and operate in layouts where there's a lot of people, but the running into people and trying to operate switch in a yard or something with people constantly trying to get by you and everything was real low on my list of activities I wanted to see happen. So I have a 4-foot minimum aisle, and I know that it's a given that is probably rare for a home layout, but it's one for me. And so that meant that the areas that are sort of shaded with light blue are all places for people to walk. Starting at the very bottom of the picture are the stairs to the upstairs, and that's where people enter the basement. So a true around the wall is kind of limited, partly because I don't yet know what the laws or regulations are in Michigan and in the city I'm going to be in, Saginaw Township, as far as whether there needs to be an emergency exit out of the basement other than at the stairs. If you'll notice in the bottom right corner, I've got something written there saying fire exit, which is there's a big window there with rollout doors leading into a yes. Yes.
So is the building on a slope so that fire exit would be out to a ground level?
No, sir. It's dead level, and so what you have is a big concrete pit that is, I'm guessing, 30 inches by the width, by a little more than the width of the window. It has a big steel grate up at the top that somebody had secured, but I have to find out whether there has to be an exit. Although I think if you have bedrooms and stuff downstairs, you're required to have such an exit. Probably, but again, I have to research that. But I thought I would leave that open in case that requirement is active. Plus, I want to have a little room for a few chairs for people to sit on. So I pushed the layout up and away so that window is fully accessible. That's probably the biggest given I have is big aisles. The second one is narrow layout. Generally 2-foot maximum width of layout. Can you guys see where it says duck under? You come down the stairs from upstairs and then there's a duck under. Let's see, does my cursor show up?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Oh, good. Okay. This is going to be a double deck layout because one of my druthers is double deck, so I can get a lot of main line. So the upper level, I'm hoping with some use of grades, climbing grades, so that the duck under turns into a nod under 52 inches or something, so it's not too hard to get in and out of there. Once you go through the duck under, this is your 4-foot aisle coming around. And here is one of the difficulties I face. Where I'm moving, see the black line down the center?
Mm-hmm.
That's a concrete wall, concrete block to be specific, and it supports the house. Ditto for here on this side of the fireplace structure, and ditto here is concrete block with a door opening here and here. And for this layout to happen, that's going to have to go away. And so I'm going to have to pay a contractor to put in steel posts and girders on either side, I think, of the concrete block wall. So then the concrete wall can be demolished, leaving the steel posts and girders to support the house so it doesn't collapse. over here, these walls are not structural here and here, and that will all be destroyed. The existing toilet will stay. A slop sink will put here. And then just a modesty curtain or something here. And a la John Armstrong, although probably less amusingly scenic, the railroad will actually run right along the wall, the two levels above the toilet and the slop sink. So if you're sitting on the can, occasionally trains will go by your left shoulder. So, add a little interest to the operation. This is concrete block, and it is structural because it supports the patio or the front porch up above. But hey, I can cram the dispatcher in there. The furnace is here. The water heater is there, not to disturb them. Leave them alone. Now, the other challenge is this walkway, 4-foot walkway here, has a minor problem, which is they have a big brick hearth out in front of the fireplace on the lower level. This has the sort of house we've got a fireplace stocked on top of the fireplace in the next floor. But I think a sledgehammer and some kersting and I can knock that away so this aisle is unimpeded. This peninsula going to this return loop here is divided down the middle with a seam block. It's 4 foot wide, again, with 2 foot given to each side of the layout. This mess down here is my first cut after a lot of head scratching to try to get this railroad to run point to point with a staging yard on the lower level and a staging yard on the upper level. And as you come around the lower level, you come up the helix and come out on the upper level, come around, come back and hit the upper level staging with a return loop for each level so that after doing a operating session, the trains that are now pointed the wrong way can be backed out, run through the return loop, and set up for running out the next way. It is a big waste of space in terms of with a much smaller minimum radius and narrower aisles. I could get in a lot more railroad, but there's this other little thing that is foremost in my mind is I'm 70 years old. And so building a railroad that has huge amounts of turnouts and huge amounts of track, that I'll just never get it done before I die. I want to get this going. And so there may only be 2 or 3 passing tracks on each deck. The rest of it there may be 45 feet of single track before the next siding, because it doesn't cost nearly as much money and time to lay a 45-foot piece of single track than having 3 towns, which each have 15 turnouts and da-da-da-da-da-da-da. So it's what I'm shooting for was something that I think, was it John Armstrong or Bruce Chubb wrote, that is a simple big layout is reasonable. Plus, in terms of maintenance, because I think all of you have experienced the joy of cleaning track and fixing turnouts and trying to keep keeping a railroad running. And so by having a simple railroad, I will try to minimize that or keep it down to a reasonable level. If I have an operating session here, I will not be able to keep 15 or 20 guys busy, even though it's 1,500 square foot. And that's a trade-off. But anyway, so throw some rocks at this, will you please?
David, are you familiar with using any CAD programs, CAD drawing programs?
I know of them. I use CAD in years past in my work.
I'd suggest getting a model railroad CAD program like CAD Rail or Extract CAD or whatever, because I'm looking at your staging yard. One of the things that you'll be shocked when you start to lay it out, when you've got proper turnout spacing and so on and so forth, that you'll find that those yard ladders are going to take up a lot of vertical or stretch space.
Yes.
You may want to play around with the ladder arrangement so that when you finally exit the yard, you don't have an 18-inch radius to turn onto your main and so on.
Right.
So because when you do the hand sketches, everything looks great. As soon as you start to lay it out, you may discover that your minimum radius that you wanted to be 30 inches becomes 18 because things didn't line up correctly. So I strongly suggest you do that. And you may find that, you may find that your staging yards are shorter than you think. Both of them, both the upper and lower. Yeah.
This ladder right here will extend right up to here to make my target. And this ladder
I was concerned
here
about that one. Yes.
This ladder will extend up here. I may have to open this concrete block up a little bit. So I actually start the ladder right up in here. So yes.
I just noticed the other ladder may be on a curve, which means you're talking about curved turnouts. You're talking about trains leaving staging on a curve. So just be very, very careful about that.
Yeah. The thing is, I have room, I think, to I have, there'll be no problem in sacrificing myself 5 or 6 feet if necessary in these 2 stretches to accommodate the ladders. But yes,
in fact, you may even want to put that ladder, if you've got the space, on the straight as much as you can.
Up here.
And then and have the staging tracks curve. That'll give you extra length. That gives you flexibility in the length of trains you want to run. If you've got 45-foot, 50-foot long mains, you might want to run 20, 25-car trains, not 15-car trains. That means that you've got room for long enough trains on your staging.
Yes.
So I'm going to make a completely different comment. I would not take out the concrete wall. I think you're buying into. So if you basically said where that loop is on the bottom right, where you've got the duck under on the bottom right.
Oh, here. Yes, the return.
If you move that up about 4 or 5 feet and just carried it all the way over to the wall where the fireplace is. So that aisleway becomes very wide there. Then you run it around and you put a loop up at the top that goes from the right side of the concrete wall through the wall to the left side, from there over to the left side and go back down the left side. So what you do is you basically come into the layout by the door that's by the helix. You walk in there, you walk up there, go in the door right there.
Right here?
No, your left. Turn to your left. That's blocked off. Where you just went straight is blocked off. So that's how you enter the layout. Then you go around the room to the other side. So the other side is actually, you come around there, you come back down, and that's a very wide aisle with the layout. And you put the layout and you run the layout around the water heater and the furnace on the other side.
Yeah.
Where you come in there. And so now you basically go around the wall and use the wall either side of the wall. That way you only have to cut one hole in the wall at the top to go through.
Up here.
Right. So what you can do is you leave the rest of the wall just the way it is, because use the wall as your room break.
The divider.
What I'm saying is, from a construction cost, you're buying into, the problem with taking out a concrete block wall is you don't have the foundation elements for posts.
Right.
So what they're going to have to do is come in and not only take out the concrete wall, they're going to have to go in and dig down and put in basically footings for piers. And by the time you get done, it's going to be hugely expensive. If you could leave the concrete wall and just cut it in one place and open a door where your mouse is, right there, open a door like a 4-foot wide doorway, and then have the layout go through that area on either side and go down that wall. And then on the other end, you don't have a duct through anymore. You kind of come in there by the helix and you walk all the way through the room and around. And the other side of the room is this long, open, very nice and wide vestibule. And you could even do some like wiggling on it if you wanted to have a little more space there. But like in the middle, you could have a kind of bump out that had like a horseshoe curve kind of thing.
Okay, so all right, I think I've got your idea sketched out here. I'll poke at that idea.
Yeah. Just like I said, touching that wall to me is so scary, because the minute you start digging into those stuff, it's like adding a second story on a house. Everybody says, oh yeah, you just add a second story on. The problem is the walls and the footings on the first level were never built to support a second floor. So when you add a second floor on, you end up having to put in a lot of additional a lot. That's like
Foundation work.
additional structural work to get there.
Right.
And
Well, this is where getting in, do some research, find a contractor, and get some architecturally approved quotes for doing such work. Yes.
Watch
David,
watch the current season of This Old House. The Asheville project, where they literally had to lift the house up, beams in.
Yeah, that's fun.
David, this is David Sampson. I using the Zoom direct message feature, I sent you some concerns I would have about your proposed design, and the recommendation that this is significant enough you can't rely on a contractor to execute it. You're going to need to get a professional engineer involved that says this is how it has to be built, and the contractor needs to worry about building it without dealing, which he's not really professionally qualified to do, with the sufficiency of the new structure. So there's some thoughts, some things that I would think about. But I think this is a really interesting presentation here, and again, could be the basis of a clinic at a convention. Planning for the future. There's a lot of things that need to be considered. I mean, drawing the plan might be one of the easiest things you're going to have to deal with.
Agreed. Yeah. Having talked to people who, talking to people that have built large layouts, and some of the things they've run into and some of the things they've had to do, that there's layer after layer after layer of complexity. But yeah. Okay. The next person had a thought.
Yeah, David, your toilet there. You want to have 3 foot clear in front of the toilet, so you're gonna have to move that slop sink a little further out.
Yep. Thank you.
Dave?
Yes, Ken.
One thought, and my whole thought being resolves the wrong way. I think of model railroading, but have you thought about a prototype that you might want to be dealing with? Is this still the Southern Pacific? Is this?
Yes, it's Southern Pacific running between Grants Pass and Crescent City, a connecting line making a connection south from Crescent City to Eureka and connecting to the Northwestern Pacific, so that this railroad is carrying bridge traffic from Grants Pass down to Eureka and points south. And the set of lies are built around the basic idea that Mount Shasta has eliminated traffic north and south all around it.
I have some minor familiarity with the area, so I would really think about doing sort of like just the Eureka part. Modeling only a piece of that.
Yep.
Otherwise, I think you're taking on way too much.
In terms of the amount of railroad I'm covering, real world, from Eureka to Crescent City is too long of a stretch.
Yeah.
All right.
World it is, but just in your model world, take a piece of that and think of it as your modeling focus.
Got it.
I basically think, from my own experience of starting something when I was 75, it's going to be tough.
Yep.
And I had to, because the ceiling collapsed on my old layout, and I had to build it.
Oh dear.
So what are your room dimensions, just out of curiosity? The actual space itself.
recreation room, it says 52 foot 10 inches by 27 foot 2 inches, but that actually is the entire width of the basement. It's 52 long, 52 10 long by 27 2 all the way across.
So that would be by the toilet there at that point. At that toilet point, it's the 27. Does that include the walls then?
No, I have not gotten the tape measure out
Okay.
and actually measured from the far wall to the far wall, but I'm pretty sure that the realtors would maximize the numbers. The data given on it on a separate here said these measurements are pretty accurate, but they're not guaranteed.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to figure on what try to be conservative on how much railroad I'm cramming in so that I'm not going to be trapped if it turns out there's 6 inches less here or there.
Right.
The 2 foot width, for example, of railroad, having read through Tony Kester's book on multi-deck design for model railroads, I may not even have 2 foot wide sections of layout where it isn't necessary to, again, give myself room and slop, particularly in areas like around this fireplace here. I'm pretty sure I'll be able to clean this out down to the concrete so it still meets code. But there's a whole bunch of code compliance inherent and all this sort of fooling around. And so I have to, this is again something for I to question, for you guys to throw rocks at, and just go from there. But good points to everybody on the fact that replacing the concrete block wall may be a very expensive or impossible thing to do. But I'll find out. I'll be finding out. Well, thank you everybody for your comments on it. I think I've got Phil, your ideas on how to rearrange the track in there. I've got that sketched out on a separate piece of paper. So I will stop sharing and pass the ball to the next person.
Well, I'm gonna go ahead and suggest we call it. I have to go pick a car up at the shop. So everybody mark your calendars for the 15th. Is anybody going up to the SIG meet? Any SIG meters? No. I went and signed up for it. We'll see what it is. It's kind of fun and interesting up there. So
yeah. Oh, Phil, because of my going to Saginaw, I won't be able to make the
February meet. I knew that.
The February meet. I had a realtor here yesterday and had a walk through in the house and starting the process of figuring out what we should do to get the house ready to put on the market. But the family wrong-footed us and said, oh, the place we were going to have Dad go went out of business, and so we have to find something else. So everything's up in the air. It could happen next week. It could happen 6 months from now. I don't know, but I have to plan worst case, which is that they'll be making us
move quickly,
moved and everything else. All right. Thanks, guys.
Well, guys,
Bill,
have a good one.
Bill, I may not be, I highly likely won't be there on the 15th, but we have a board meeting and a general meeting this coming Saturday. So I'll make sure that they'll be prepared for the group when they come up on the 15th.
Well, that sounds like good luck with surgeries. We don't talk before then.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're still going to look like a model railroader, though, just so you know.
Yeah. Anyway,
very sleepy one, but
yeah, everybody have a good week, and we will talk in 2 weeks.
Yeah, happy Groundhog Day, everybody.
All right.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Happy. Have a good one. Bye now.
Bye-bye.